The Legend of Zelda has always been about exploration as you adventure through a vibrant, fantasy-filled world, whether you traverse the land, the sea, or the sky. But there's a much more horrific side to Zelda, filled with horrors that one could hardly imagine finding hiding in the dark. Terrors that, without the Triforce of courage, would likely send me running away as fast as I could, leaving it to quietly exist by itself. Here's my 10 picks for the scariest things in The Legend of Zelda. Starting off with a pretty unnerving urban legend that inspired what is arguably the weirdest encounter in the entire series is that of the Haunted Restroom in Skyward Sword. To experience the tale of the Haunted Restroom, after talking to a man in the cafe at the bazaar, or the woman in the Knight's kitchen, you learn that something pretty odd is happening in the Knight's Academy restroom at night. After sleeping until night, Link can go to the bathroom on the 3rd floor, where he will hear a strange moaning sound leaking out of it. When confronting the sound, the voice asks Link for anything paper-related, which he does not have. The next morning, Link can then talk to another student named Colin near the bathroom, who is currently writing a love letter. Talking to Colin will reveal that he has written a love letter to Karain, a fellow classmate of the Knight's Academy. He'll ask you to deliver this letter to her and not to the person in the toilet. He really doesn't want you to give that letter to whatever is in the toilet. So after promptly sleeping until night, Link can immediately head back to the restroom, where the creepy voice will now let Link come inside, which turns out to be a ghostly hand that emerges from the toilet. After giving the love letter to the hand, Link can tell Colin the next morning what he's done, which will send Colin running in sadness, or perhaps terror? He could just write another one. An interview with Shigeru Miyamoto revealed that this was inspired by the rather horrifying Japan urban legend of Hanako-san, who was a young girl that was supposedly murdered in a school bathroom by a parent or stranger, committed suicide, or was killed during a bombing raid in World War II, where she now terrorizes the bathrooms of schools. Children in Japan sometimes dare each other to walk into the girl's 3rd floor bathroom, knock on the stall door 3 times, and say her name. Then when you open the stall door, a little girl in a red skirt will be there, wanting a friend to play with, or to drag you to the underworld through the toilet. Waiting until the next night and going across the hall to Goose's room, Link will find a toilet hand stroking Colin's face, saying that she has found true love and that she will basically haunt Colin forever. I can't imagine where that hand has been. A rather unnerving tale is the House of Skolata. Scattered across the depths of Hyrule are large, extremely aggressive spiders that range from the size of a child all the way up to a large man. In the southeast of Kakariko Village in Ocarina of Time lies a large gray building. This building was once the home of a wealthy family that had 5 children and their father, but now the inside is mostly barren, except for some ruined furniture, various portraits of spiders, and is completely covered by cobwebs. But that's not all Link finds there. Inside, Link finds the family still alive, but due to their greed, the family was cursed with a spider's curse, and have now all mutated into human Skolatas. All that remains of their humanity is a resemblance of their once human arms helplessly dangling among their thin spider legs, and their faces that are twisted into the Skolata's bone hanging among the ruins of their once cherished home. When I first played Ocarina of Time, I thought the family were actually enemies, and I quickly attacked them only to hear their screams as they then fought back. However, the curse can be lifted by collecting 100 golden Skolata tokens across the game. The old man in the town who tells Link about the tale of the family seems unaware that they're still alive, and speaks about them as if it's now an ancient folklore passed down between generations, meaning the family could have suffered like this for a while before Link saved them. Something that many Zelda fans may be able to share was the panic they first experienced the first time the Blood Moon rose in Breath of the Wild. Glowing red amber-like particles begin rising from the ground, a creepy song began playing faster and faster that grew louder with each passing moment, as the entire screen turned red. Blood Moons occur when Calamity Ganon's power reaches its peak and escapes from Zelda's control within Hyrule Castle, dyeing the night sky and the moon red with malice, which occurs every 2 hours the game is played. The first time it happened, I was in the middle of running for my life through the Faron jungle at night and was low on hearts, having no idea what was happening. The Redeads are extremely tall, zombie-like creatures that are found in Zelda's dark dungeons, tombs, or ruined places that sometimes have an air of death to them. Redeads can either be found standing hunched over as if frozen, or sitting crouched down in the fetal position. They have extremely good hearing, and will immediately become aware of anyone around them as they walk about, or even if they attempt to draw or put away an item. They then petrify whoever dares to go near them with their gaze or by emitting a high-pitched scream. Slowly walking to their frozen prey, ready to drain them of their life. Some have thought Redeads to be reanimated corpses, while other sources say they are created from magic. If Link slays a Redead, any other Redeads in the area will walk towards and crouch beside the fallen Redead until its body fades away, ignoring Link. This behavior is never explained in the game, although it could be that they are mourning its death or even consuming its corpse. What is likely a place that will be mentioned several times over the course of this video is wandering around Kakariko Village. You will find their graveyard, which hosts the entrance to the most horrific dungeon in all of Zelda that I can't believe exists in a kid's game, being the Shadow Temple. This temple is much more of a torture prison than anything else. Its blood-stained chambers are lined with the skulls of its victims. Prison-like doors, large guillotines, and other torturous-looking devices, along with a host of undead enemies, are waiting for you there. There is even a room with a large wooden X-shaped structure in it. Below it are pools of dried blood, suggesting something pretty gruesome happened there. According to the Great Hyrule Encyclopedia, lying behind the Kakariko graveyard, the Shadow Temple was built with the blood and bones of Hyrule's evil dead, a labyrinth of illusions and puzzles, each designed to add another resident to its already overflowing crypts. But more than that is a message that comes across the screen saying, "Here is gathered Hyrule's bloody history of greed and hatred." This is likely because the Shadow Temple was used by the Sheikah tribe as a place of interrogation and torture for Hyrule's royal family, and was so terrible that it is taboo for the royal family to speak of what happened. But to top off the horror that is lurking in the temple is at its bottom lies Bongo Bongo, a large shadow being with hands that look like they were cut off. He has a single large eye in place of where his head would normally be, with skin that looks like it once belonged to his neck and possibly head that is peeled back like the petals of a flower. You have to use the Lens of Truth item to see Bongo Bongo's body, which you get from the bottom of the well in Kakariko Village that Bongo Bongo escaped from before going to the Shadow Temple. The old man in Kakariko Village tells a story of how a house used to stand where the well is that belonged to a man who could see the truth, probably with the Lens of Truth that he possessed. This man could have very well been used as a torturer for the royal family. We don't know if Bongo Bongo was once this man, and he could have been a thief, as the punishment for thieving sometimes is having one's hands cut off. As for Bongo's head, it could have been amputated in a gruesome way, with his skin even being peeled off in the process. Truly terrifying. In Kakariko Village lies its village well, what should simply be a place for merely holding the village's water, instead hosts deceased enemies, corpses, and another torture rack. But even worse lurks a creature that has served as nightmare fuel for years to come, being the Dead Hand Monster. And this thing is horrific. Lying in a chamber full of the skulls of its victims, Link finds long, pale, blood-stained arms sticking up out of the ground. These infinite arms serve to grab hold of the creature's unfortunate prey, holding them in place as Dead Hand then slowly moves over to eat its prey alive. Whoever it was that thought, yeah, let's put a blood-covered monster in a room full of human skulls in a game for 10-year-olds had quite the idea. Almost more unnerving is the fact that the villager's water supply comes from a chamber full of bones and dead bodies. You're sailing on the Great Sea, looking at a star-filled sky, and suddenly thunderous, dark clouds begin appearing all over as if at random. Just as sudden, a haunting melody begins playing, and then you see it. A transparent ship surrounded by blue flames slowly sailing around. On its bow is a carving of what appears to be a person praying among its tattered flag and sails. This ghost ship was certainly one of the coolest discoveries in the Wind Waker, and its backstory is completely unknown. The vessel holds either a Triforce chart or a Triforce shard, depending on which version you're playing, meaning that this ship may have once been a ship of importance, if not a pirate ship that was punished by the goddess for stealing a shard of the sacred Triforce. According to Lenzo, the only man to have ever photographed the ship and survived to tell the tale, the man who once researched the reaches of the sea where the ghost ship faded in and out of sight, drew a map of its movements, and upon finishing died a most unexpected death. This map is found in a hidden ship graveyard beneath an island. Looking closely at the ghost ship, it seems to resemble Tetra or Princess Zelda's ship in its build and design, along with every ship found in the graveyard beneath the island. Perhaps this ship was once part of the Royal Hylian fleet tasked with guarding the Triforce shard, and its crew now remains as the blue flames we see gliding along with it until its purpose is no longer needed. As the darkness of night falls upon Hyrule, Castletown raises its drawbridge and locks its gates until sunrise, for the Stalchildren or Stalchildren claw their way up from the ground and mindlessly wander the dark fields, violently attacking whoever they see. In Ocarina of Time, the Stalchildren are one of the first enemies Link encounters if he fails to make it to Castletown before nightfall, leaving Link to take on an endless onslaught from the dead until sunrise. Not much is known about these skeletons that appear in great numbers throughout the Zelda series, but looking at Hyrule's past may give us a clue as to who they once might have been. Prior to Ocarina of Time, there is said to have been a great Hyrulean civil war, a terrible war that lasted for a very long time, and most likely resulted in many deaths between all the races of Hyrule. Looking back at Skyward Sword, we were introduced to a race of anthropomorphic moles called Magma, who, along with having a longer snout, like the Stalchildren, have sharp claws that allowed them to quickly tunnel in and out of the ground. Could the Stalchildren be the remains of the Magma who were wiped out in the war, or instead do they simply represent the many soldiers who died in the war? Like many of these horrors, perhaps they are better left alone. In the far end of the Gerudo Desert, standing silently amongst the sand, is the Arbiter's Grounds, or looking a bit like a coliseum for gladiators. This building is actually a prison, built to hold the worst criminals the land has ever known, holding them until they were sentenced to death. When entering this building, you'll eventually find a large metal sword embedded in the ground, bound by ropes with mystical talismans attached to it. It's possible that this sword was used for various executions that took place in the Arbiter's Grounds, and these talismans keep the sword trapped in the earth, while serving as a warning to others, for the sword was too dangerous for whoever trapped it to destroy themselves. Upon cutting one of the ropes, the sword breaks free of its chains, and as if by magic, lifts itself out of the ground after what we can only speculate as years, if not decades, of sitting in silence. Upon transforming into a wolf, Link is able to see that the sword is held up by an evil horned spirit who then violently attacks Link. Upon defeat, the sword bursts into a cluster of flies that scatter. This sword may be loosely based on the demon Azazel of the Abrahamic religious script, who is described as being a demonic goat imprisoned within a desert for corrupting humanity with a knowledge of warfare and inciting barbarism among men. The Death Sword demon also shares similarities to Phantom Ganon, as it levitates, throws orbs of magic, and has horns. But this demon may just be the spirit of a former prisoner or the last executioner to hold the blade, who was sealed away within it upon developing a taste for blood. The entirety of this video could be filled solely with the events that go on during Majora's Mask, but nothing in the game is more tragic than the fate of the son of the Deku Butler. The Deku Butler, who serves the Deku King, has been living a life of stress and worry by the time you meet him, because he's worried sick about his son who left home for seemingly no reason. He wishes that his son would simply write him a letter letting him know that he's okay wherever he is. But it's during the game's end credits, when Link leaves Hyrule and the townspeople hold a great celebration, the music fades into the game's ominous opening music, where we see the Deku Butler mourning over a small tree. At the start of the game, Tattle remarks how Link, cursed into being a Deku, looks just like the tree, as he is all dark and gloomy, and the tree itself looks like it could start crying at any second, hinting at the eerie truth. This small tree is confirmed to be the Butler's son, who had his soul torn from his body by Skull Kid kid at the start of the game, who then used it to curse Link into having the form of a Deku scrub. Majora's Mask truly created one of the most heart-wrenching scenes in all of Zelda that is made even worse as we watch the Deku Butler shuddering over the husk of his son who died alone in the woods. His dark contrast to the game's happy ending serving as a reminder that no matter what we do, we can't save everyone. Personally, I find tragedies like the Deku Butler's son to be the things that really hit me, as opposed to being something scary that you could face like the ghost ship or dead hand. These tragedies have already happened and are irreversible, for death remains final. But if you wanted something a bit more exciting and scary than what was offered in this video, I saved the weirdest and most off-putting tale for last. In Majora's Mask, Link eventually finds himself at Romani Ranch, where he meets a young girl named Romani who asks Link to come back to the ranch at 2 AM as alien-like creatures that Romani refers to as they or them come to the ranch every year to steal the ranch's special bred cows. If Link fails to stop them, they abduct the ranch's cows along with Romani, who shows up the next day looking completely lifeless from whatever it is that happened to her. If you want to learn more about games' strangest mysteries, then watch this video and subscribe so you don't miss my next Zelda theory.